Welcome to the Best Practices Show. My name is Kirk Barron, and I am your host. And I want to welcome you. If you're here for the first time, I just want to do a couple things. I want to just welcome you to a very inviting community where we're just here all about learning. So no egos here. And you're going to see, I don't know the answers to everything or anything sometimes. And so I just like to have the experts on and I ask them great questions. And you can do the same today as you're watching this. And we're doing this live on Facebook. So if you have questions, feel free to add them to the feed as we get going. And number two, we watch the metrics a lot. So if you're a young dentist and you're showing up for the first time, I want to encourage you, if you're listening to Spotify right now or anything, or if you're watching this, I want to encourage you just to hit the subscribe button wherever you listen to podcasts, whether it be Stitcher, iTunes, whatever. You're going to see every single week, we're going to bring you a great expert in dentistry who's going to really challenge the way you think so you can create a better practice and a better life. And I don't want you to miss out on it. And we take great show notes here. So immediately after the show, what I do is I hand these off to our writers, and our writers will put this all together, organize the great things that are said and all of the quotes and links. And you're going to see links to Kevin and Renee. You'll be able to reach out to them and ask them questions because I know you'll have some after this. Wait until you get a chance to experience this. You're going to see I've got some questions. So I want to encourage you just to do that. Also, if you haven't joined our private Facebook group, I'll encourage you to join us over there. We're over 13,000 of you joined us in the COVID conference last year, and it was pretty cool. It's just a lot of dentists and team members helping each other. So join us over there where the conversation continues all the time. And then lastly, if you're a dentist and you're just thinking, gosh, I just want to create a better practice and a better life, we have a ton of resources over here. We're a practice coaching company. So we're a small company, but we work with practices all over the United States, just helping them create a better practice and better life. So you can join us for the Friday masterclasses at Act Dental U. One of our core values is always be growing. And so you're going to see, we're going to be constantly adding tools and resources back there. And if you just need help and you want to talk to somebody about your practice, I love talking to people who are looking at challenges in the practice. Feel free to join us over there. And you're always going to see a lot of support. Now, I want to introduce my guests today because you guys are both near and dear to my heart. Now, some of you, if you guys have been watching the COVID conference last year or any of the replays, or you just showed up, you know my guest, Dr. Kevin Groth, but then you haven't met Renee. And we're going to be talking about, and I know Renee, and I'm proud of both of you guys because not only are you two awesome people from a core value standpoint, but you guys have made something work that is potentially very difficult for dentists. And it's the associateship thing. So Kevin, and when we were talking about this and Renee, before we went live, like, what do we call this? Like, what do we call this? Let's talk about like both sides of it, the doctor and the associate. But I want to hear from both of you. Before we get into the how, let's talk about the why. Why is this such an important topic? Who wants to go first?
I think it's important to recognize that this is a key layer of the profession that is constantly talked about in a negative light. So I remember when I was in dental school, some of the practice management courses that we took at Michigan flat out said that just expect every associateship to fail. And it's such a weird thing to be able to just go into a job and expect things to not work out. And I think when you do have those expectations, it's almost just setting yourself up for failure. And it's something that it can work out, and it's worked out beautifully with Renee and I, and I've really enjoyed it. And I'm excited to kind of highlight some of the good things that have come from this opportunity. And it all comes from a place that it's well-intended. And I think that's the most important theme of all this. So I'd like to kind of keep talking more about it, but I'll pass it off to you, Renee. I think that is great things to do.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with everything you just said, but I mean, to dovetail, I think everyone's heard the story by now of the burnt out young new grad dentist that, is just miserable and has no really defined vision for their life. And at the time before, I joined Kevin, I didn't know that I had a choice, and I didn't really consider what was going to be for me in the future. And it comes from confidence or lack of confidence coming out of school. And lack of having a good mentor. So really navigating that initial step is hard when you don't have someone to really help direct you. So yeah, that's I think really what initially led us there.
Yeah. And the thing I like about this, because I know you're both be very transparent about this. Like you guys don't have like the perfect practice where it's awesome and because Kevin, you didn't have like the perfect day today where it was, oh yeah. You guys are real people with a real practice. Would you agree?
Oh, totally. But that's the beauty of dentistry. You don't have expectations beyond just perfection. And I think it's important to recognize that none of us are. And I think that's another thing that works for Renee and I is that I was right out in the front and said, I'm not perfect. And I don't expect you to be, because I've worked in other associateships that I kind of felt the pressure that I had to live up to the senior doctor and the expectations of that. And it was very stressful. And I think when you put those guards down, I think it's important that it allows for authenticity and vulnerability and the learning moments and mentorship and all the good things that can come from associateships.
Yeah. And Renee, let me ask you, give us a little sense of your journey. Was this the first office that you worked in after graduation? Tell us about your journey in this.
Yeah, in a nutshell, I joined an FQHC, so a federally qualified health center for a year, and it was like another year of dental school. Great experience, picking up your speed. No patient communication, really contact, no relationships formed. There was just no time. So, quickly got burnt out of that. Joined a DSO, where was a slight improvement, but with that setting comes some limitations as well. Not having a mentor, being put, in time constraints and situations were really a lot of what brought me to dentistry. I just felt like I couldn't embrace patient relationships, for example. So, that's when I started reaching out to Kevin. We met in dental school. He was a fourth year when I was a first year. And, then quickly he started teaching in the clinic as he started practicing, and he was my clinical instructor, and we just connected. I think he just gravitated towards people who were really driven and motivated, and it feels like forever ago at the time, but we just stayed in touch. So I was meeting him at his office just to talk and vent and share kind of my experience with really no direct intention, thinking that we would end up together. So it's it's been a huge blessing, but there was so much mentorship that came from that relationship I was building with Kevin that flourished over time.
Yeah. So Kevin, walk us through that. So, this is a big decision for a lot of people. What were some of the things that you did, lessons learned that you're like, okay, this worked? Because, we're all humans, and I know you well enough that you're always like, okay, I want to get this right. I want to get this right. Like, what were some of the big foundational pieces of the way you thought that helped?
Yeah, so I think it's important to kind of talk about Renee's story a little bit more from my end of things, because I knew her in dental school a little bit, but I think when you're not really next to each other in grades, you don't really quite know each other all that well. So when I started teaching, I didn't come to dental school to teach, someone how to do 19 DO composite. Anybody can do that, and that's not really the reason why I drove that way. And I use that as more of a vehicle to teach and inspire people and share my experiences post-graduation and the frustrations that you can encounter and the things to expect. And I always wanted to have these connections with people during clinic, after clinic, whatever it may be, during lunch. And I'd always say, my doors are always open. You're welcome to come to my office anytime after you graduate, during school, whatever you want to do, because I just want to be here as a shoulder to lean on, because I had so many people I leaned on early on, which helped elevate me through. And it may come to a surprise, but Renee was the only one who took me up on that opportunity. And it was something that she always hung around clinics with me and talked about different things. And then when she was at the FUHC, we sat in my office and talked about that experience. And then when she went to DSO, we talked about that. So the intention of her being my associate was never there, but I was just really impressed with her drive and her ability to kind of cling to me. And that's what mentorship is just, if you have some mentee who's a sponge, it's fun to mentor them. And that's what it was for Renee. So when my uncle retired and I had an opportunity to bring in an associate, it was a no-brainer, because I didn't have to ask anybody else because I knew Renee was right there and ready and willing, and never was a thought at the time. But then all of a sudden when the opportunity came up, she was there. So I was very impressed with her in terms of her drive and her ability to try and be better and be authentic and vulnerable with her current situations and her desire to become something. And that's something I think if you're a young dentist or in dental school, take those opportunities with those people to lean on them, because they just want to be there to help. And if you're not going to take those opportunities, then you're missing out on potentially great opportunities later on in your career. So I think that's one thing I would definitely recommend.
Go ahead.
So, but to answer your question, when it came to drafting an associateship, I had 4 other associateships myself that I went through. And when I first got out of school, it was a heavy PPO practice that I was literally running between operatories, and there was 5 operatories I was working out of, and probably 4 hygiene. It was insane. It helped me with my skill sets in terms of getting up speed, because there's always something to learn from each one of those associateships. So to me, it's never a failure if you pick up something from it. So, and I learned how to be efficient. I learned how to do things on a faster scale, which I was not used to at a dental school. And he was an amazing boss for me, because he just let me kind of just run and do my thing and figure myself out. He was also very personal with his patients all at the same time. So you can be efficient. You can also have some personality to it too. Another one, I was just kind of dropped into the office on a Tuesday, and I had an assistant and 1 hygiene, and I never really interacted with the boss. And I think that was something that I didn't really like. And I wanted my associateship that I had in my office to mimic the mentorship environment and the partnership that comes from it. Because if I was just here to expect Renee to show up and see my patients on a Tuesday and then I just disappear so I can go play golf, that's just not the intention of it, and it would never work. So another one is I had a great mentor out of school, and I worked with him, and it was an amazing opportunity, and I learned a lot, but it wasn't my vision, and I think it was important to recognize that you do need to have some type of common sense of what this partnership is, because it really is a partnership. And if you're not on the same page, I think that's important to recognize as well. So those are kind of some key things that really I'd use to draft an associateship that we have today.
That's cool. Now, Renee, tell us from your perspective. Okay, so you're coming out, you're looking for a place to work. Like, what's going through your head? Now, I'm going to introduce some things because, I've been doing this for way too long. And I'll play a little bit of devil's advocate. There's no, these new associates coming out, they're just entitled, or they're not go-getters. You hear all this stuff. But I want to know what you were thinking coming out that made that type of a connection.
I was thinking any experience will be a good experience at that time. So right. I really wasn't very selective. I knew I wanted to be busy. I didn't want to sit around and, have to immediately start building a patient base. I knew I kind of wanted to walk into something to get started. I was thinking about my school loan. I definitely wasn't thinking about the term work-life balance or hours or anything like that. So I was really willing to do anything. I was commuting like an hour and a half one way at one office. So it's just the things that were important were just building my speed and learning how to interact with people. And it served its purpose. I'm very thankful for it. And, I learned to work with a team in different environments that were not as ideal, so more challenging in some ways. But something Kevin said with the last question that I just want to tie to is, when you meet someone that you resonate with, even if it's not very clear at the time that that's someone who's going to be your boss or your owning doctor or your partner, it's just something that you really have to gravitate onto. And that's something that I did, even though I was with the DSO and FQHC. I constantly gravitated to people that I shared the same values with. And so I was very selective in that and the type of mentors I was seeking outside the practice. So
go a little deeper on that, because you're treading on one of my favorite topics ever, which is core values. So what does that mean? Like, when you say values, like, what does that mean to you? And Kevin, what does that mean to you when you're talking about a relationship like this?
Yeah, number one is how people treat each other, right? So whether it's the close relationships with your family, so you get to know someone in the way they treat their friends and family, the way they treat patients, the way they interact with their team. So just the type of relationships that someone has and the way they value them was key to me. And it was very clear that Kevin had that as a great balance already as a young owning doctor with his team and with the patient. So I got a chance to do a little bit of shadowing with him. There was just a little hiccup. My office had flooded. So it was just a blessing in disguise. I had like 2 months to just shadow Kevin. And that was very, very easy to pick up on a lot of our shared values at the time. Trust. So establishing trust, building trust, and how important that is between him and I, between our patients. Really our team. So being someone who's a team player. I mean, obviously Kevin's an amazing pioneer and does amazing things with his own vision, but equally, inspiring a team to work together. I mean, that was very evident from day one. Just from like walking into the team huddles. We never had huddles, at my previous practice, and the time it was taken to really just bond with the team in the morning, not just going through patient schedules, but just the whole process of it all. I could just see the time and the effort that he was taking with the team.
Right. Now, again, I've seen Kevin stress, but I'm gonna ask you another question because I really want to know. It's one thing to watch somebody when a day's going well. I learned more when things go bad, like how they deal, because you get to see a lot. And granted, nobody has a perfect life. We all lose our minds at times. You know what I mean? But Renee, you got to see both good and bad, and you're like, okay, I can deal with both. Like, I like that. Or I mean, was that your perspective in there? What was some of the things that you noticed in those lights?
Be more specific.
Okay. Well,
I'm trying to dig up dirt, Renee.
What's
here?
Oh, you can say anything, but Kevin, I think you can kind of get a sense. It's the good and the bad and the ugly in any relationship. At the end of the day, you want to say, is this the right fit for me? And so I want you to talk about that too, Kevin, what Renee just mentioned on the core values side of thing. Like, how important is it you finding the right, because you can find one that's productive. That's great. But when you find somebody who's good and fits your values, now that's a home run.
Yeah, I didn't want a revolving door of associateships. I didn't want people to come in and out and patients would be confused. Like, where did the last doctor go? Why is this happening? Because they look poorly on the practice. But if they see somebody consistently they're comfortable with, it really means a lot more about the intention behind what this associateship was. But to talk about core values, it's simply put, connecting with people on a genuine level you share some type of core value with. So to me, every single person that works here, we all share a core value, and we want to grow forward, always try our best, establish relationships with each other, and just be good people and enjoy what we do. So I think it's easy to identify within Renee, because there was no need to interview people. And I know it sounds crazy because I just had so much trust and ability, because I knew who she was for 4 years prior to that. So it means so much more to me that I have somebody that I knew would fill these voids and or this position well. But it didn't start off that way. I think it had to develop over the course of a year and a half into what it is today too. So I think that's important to recognize, that I didn't expect her to be perfect. And I didn't expect her to be the person she is today right off the get-go. I knew it was going to take a lot of time to develop these things. And so that's why, even when I think we should start going down this road, but when we had these pre-working discussions about what this is all going to be like and the expectations, I think it was very clear to me that there were a lot of things that we wanted to kind of draw in the sand or draft a contract or whatever it may be, so we can identify how this is going to work. What are the expectations on my end? What are the expectations on your end? So when we start to work together, then everything's kind of clear and understood. So I don't know.
Okay. And then how was the rest of the team? How did you, bringing in another doctor with the rest of the team, tell us about that. What worked, what didn't work? What were some of the lessons that you guys had together?
I think my team is very particular about who we bring in as an associate, as an assistant, as a front desk, because we spent a long time working with Act Dental, creating the culture and the team that we have right now. So it's our most valuable asset. And when you have somebody that doesn't fit and align within that team, it can be such a cancer to the office. So to me, I want to make sure that I'm hiring the right people. They also want to make sure that we're hiring the right people too. So I think they all knew that Renee was going to be a great fit from the get-go. And I think it's just what your gut is telling you when you hire people. Sometimes you're wrong, so you have to be kind of quick to fire that or put that fire out. But I think they all knew this was going to work from the get-go too. I don't know what your end of things that you thought of, Renee, but.
Yeah, I mean, I think like attracts like, right? So I was attracted because we shared a lot of the same values. I'm going to use that word again, but so we obviously it was not an immediate chemistry with the team. There was some effort and work and just time, but the initial welcoming and acceptance was there, and I think it's because they knew that I was there to support really what everyone had established with just going through ACT, and I was on board and willing and able, and I didn't give any resistance because I agreed with the way things were going and how the team was run.
And they like her more than they like me. I mean, that's clear.
What?
The patients like her more. They're like, look at our Google reviews. It's always about Dr. Miller, which is the best compliment. I have such great respect for her and what she does and who she is at our office, because I didn't want to replicate a clone of myself either. I wanted her to become something of herself within the boundaries of this practice and beyond. So that was important to me to recognize that. And there's no jealousy. There's no competitiveness. There's nothing that if a patient wants to see her, by all means, just please go and vice versa. But I think it's important that you had those expectations prior, because if you do have those tendencies to have some jealousy or some comparative nature, it probably is not going to work out all that well for you, because there's kind of that now established hierarchy that you can't really necessarily have.
Right.
Sorry, Kevin said something that patients that we go back and forth about. And I think what was really nice is you already had kind of a setup for me as your associate to come into. Do you want to talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, I think it's great. I mean, I took over my uncle's practice. So when I merged my dad and my uncle's practice, I had my dad's patients for a long time that I've already established relationships with, but my uncle's patients I didn't know. So I had a pool that I said, these are yours, take it and run with them. And I think that's been great, because now she's able to kind of dive into her own practice within the practice. And that's been a nice, clear-cut way of doing things. All the while, when I'm not here, I see them. And when she's not here, I see them too. So we go back and forth and share them. But at the same point, it's a nice way of working through it.
Awesome. And then I want you to go back to what you said a little bit earlier, because again, when you're bringing in another dentist, some of the mistakes dentists make is they give the new dentist the least desirable things, which are the evenings, the weekends. Now, the truth of it is all practices are different. So we just can't throw all that in a bucket, but your heart and your head have to be set in the right place. Like we're going to create a place that these people want to stay. They want to grow, right? Give us some perspective on that from both of you. Because I hear the horror stories from associates too. They're like, oh my gosh, I started this practice and I got Sundays right away. Like I was working 7 to 7 on a Sunday. I'm like, that sounds horrible. But
I wasn't going to change my days. I wasn't going to change my hours that we worked, and I wasn't going to flip the team around, because then I always felt like if you had evening hour, which we don't have evening hours, but if we're going to add those, then half the team is going to work the evening. I didn't really want to have like a JV versus varsity type of lineup, I guess, if it's best to describe it as. But also, I wasn't just going to shove all the occlusal fillings in Renee's schedule, because I've been in that associateship too, where I treatment planned a crown on a Tuesday afternoon when I was there, and now all of a sudden the patient can never come in for a Tuesday crown for the prep, because the doctor took that out of my schedule, and that's not fair. So if you treatment plan it and they sign up for it, by all means, I'm not going to steal it out of her column, because that's just not what works for me. And likewise, I'm not going to have my favorite assistant or my favorite hygienist work with me, and then the other doctor's going to work with the second tier assistant or whatever it may be, because again, it's just not. It doesn't work that way at our office. Everyone's equal. We're all on the same page. And I think it's important to recognize, because from experience, I knew that that's how it was at other offices, and I did not want to have that.
And so, Renee, from your perspective, and again, it's like point counterpoint, like you came in and you get to do some good stuff. I mean, like, one of the first times I met you was at the Chicago Midwinter Dental, and I'm like, wait, you're here. Where's Kevin? And you're like, Kevin's not coming. I just brought I would do the education on my own. I'm like, wow, that's pretty cool that you get to start and you're kind of thrown into the comprehensive realm right away.
Absolutely. I mean, I think that's really what probably was the first part of what made our associateship work. Was I wasn't put under this label of associate, that's getting the crappy hours and, not having really autonomy and treatment planning and following through that treatment plan. So, I mean, really, we really operate like partners in a way, obviously, if anything, we're there to support each other and cover for each other when we need to. But, and there's some personalities that I don't work well with and Kevin works great with, and there's vice versa too. So I think we've also honed in on what we each can offer to kind of balance things out. But as far as CE goes, I mean, yeah, that's something I really never had the time to carve out before. So it's just something that Kevin really opened my eyes up to and encouraged it, from the beginning. And just, I will be finishing the Dawson program in April. So just following his footsteps in that. And I mean, that's just been life-changing in itself. When he first introduced it to me, it was like, how am I going to spend that kind of money on, CE, and how am I going to miss this amount of work for, going and traveling? And what about traveling expenses and these things that as a young associate, you're thinking so short term and short-sighted. And I mean, I think I said this to Kevin the other day. I said, you could have told me a blank number that Dawson would cost and I would go do it. And it's number one, because he supported me financially and helping me do that too. But I don't know, just having someone to create a little hindsight for you, I think it makes all the difference. So, another value that we have is just like continuing to grow, right? So through CE and the way our practice works, I mean, the fact that we can both practice under Dawson philosophy is amazing. We can talk to patients the same way.
Yeah.
And
Kevin, was that a non-negotiable from the beginning? Like, whoever I bring in here, like, we got to start, they got to love education. Did you, Renee, did he say that right away? Like, okay, listen, here's how it works here. Like, how'd you have that conversation about the CE thing? Cause I love it.
I just knew that's whoever I hired had to have been a CE junkie in many capacities. Now there's a balance of life that maybe I'm a little more than a lot of other people, but at the same point, to demand something like that, I also think it's important to compensate for those things. And so I said, hey, in our contract, I'm going to pay you X amount per year to take this and do CE. Now, right off the get-go, I knew that Dawson was probably the best thing for her because it's what I went through and that's what the practice is structured behind. So I wanted her to jump in. I knew that there was some financial barriers there. So I said, all right, I'm going to take the next 5 years. I'm going to pay you that amount, and if it doesn't work out, we can always, prorate it out that way. But I trust that this is what's going to happen. And I know it's going to work out well. And to be completely frank, financially, we've already made back those dollars that both of us have invested into that program for her education. So if the doctor's not willing to support those type of things, I would question what the intention is behind the senior doctor in terms of bringing on someone else to come and take their spot. But another thing I recognize is, Renee, you wanted to work 5 days a week. And I said, no, you're never going to work 5 days a week. You're going to do 4 days a week. And because that's not the intention of what your associateship is here with me, is that I want you to have a balance of life because I have a balance of life. And it's not fair for me to ask something of you to do something different than I would do myself, because there are other jobs out there that they say, hey, I'm bringing on this associateship so I can now take 2 days a week off. And that's not the intention behind this. So I love how we structured our office schedule too, because we work together 3 days a week. So we can have these dialogues side by side throughout the day, but then we each have a solo day throughout the week. And it's a great thing because it allows for us to really kind of be on our own and get our feet wet on our own. But also at the same point, I love the side dialogues, and it's really developed who you are as a person. I mean, the metamorphosis that you've had over the course of a year and a half here at this office is so remarkable. And it's because we've had a lot of those discussions about professional development, personal development, home, family, whatever it is, we have those open dialogues, and it's been so amazing, and it's been so much fun to kind of grow. But I've also grown myself through those dialogues too. So it's a win-win.
And Renee, can I ask you, so what happens when you say to your employer, like, I want to work 5, and they go, nope, you're not working 5, you're working 4. Like is that a weird conversation to have? I mean, where you're like, what? Like,
I remember the conversation being more gentle than that, but, I think I had no idea what balance of life meant. So I just assumed that's how it goes 5 days a week, and, very soon I realized that I could be better, more productive in 4 days than I could in 5, and have a balance of life, and, be the best I can be for our team. And as an associate, it just became clear pretty quickly. So I didn't fight him on it at all, but I just my eyes had never been opened up to it before. So
that's awesome.
It's just what it is. But that's what I ask upon people, and that's what we need to do, is you need to walk the talk. So
but what are some ahead of time was key, right?
Right. What are some Oh, go ahead. No, go ahead.
No, go for it. What were you saying?
What are some of the biggest, from both of your perspectives, what are some of the things that you think dentists get wrong on both sides of the fence? Like what do they get wrong, or what's the biggest miss? Because
I think associates, when they come into an associateship, think that their schedule is going to be slammed off the get-go. And I know, because I worked in 4 different associateships, that it's going to take at least 3 or 4 months for you to get busy, because you're going to build up a rapport with the patients and trust. But in reality, it's going to take probably a solid year. So when I structured the contract with Renee, I said, hey, I have no expectation of your production numbers for the first year, and I'm going to compensate you off of a number at a bare minimum for 6 months just to cover you to stay afloat. Now, it might not be as much as you're making right now, but at the same point in time, that's the minimum that you'll get. And then from there, you'll keep growing. But from there, it just kind of gave us some time. It gave her time to really slow things down with patients, get to know them, establish rapport, build the trust, do it the right way. Because when you do slow things down, the day becomes so much more remarkable, and the relationships with those patients become remarkable. So when you do recommend some type of treatment, it's not like you're trying to sell them on anything, because it's a genuine, hey, this is what I would recommend, because this is what I would do for my mother, my father, my sister, my brother, whatever it may be. And also, what we didn't expect is by having more time, we were able to sit in the office and just kind of chat, and developed a relationship within us that we've really grown and learned from each other from that aspect too. So I think that was one of those key beginning dialogues that said, this is what it's going to be like. And I think that's an important piece to any associateship, is kind of recognize that you're not going to be busy off the get-go, but also, if you're not going to be busy, you should probably be compensated, because it's just kind of an uncomfortable situation if you're not making money because you're going to do things the wrong way. Right.
Renee, what are some of the things that you see dentists and associates get wrong from your perspective?
I think that a lot of associates don't think that they have a choice to find an environment that works for them. And until you're exposed to it, you don't really realize that you can. And, that's, in a nutshell. But, with Kevin, he's really invested his time and effort into getting to know me as a person, and not just someone who's just showing up for a job, and, promoting me with the team. And I could go on and on and on, but, I would say there are some easy mistakes that you just make along the way, and you have to make them.
Yeah. Yeah. And
mistakes are the best kind, though. I knew there were times where she was getting herself into kind of some corners with some of these patients, especially pre-Dawson. And I was like, this is going to be a learning one, for you. But I kept my mouth shut, because it's so easy for someone to dive in and kind of say stop. But you don't learn from the successes; you learn from those hard patients. So for me, it was like, okay, have fun. We'll talk about this in a little bit, and we did. So I think it's a good dialogue, but just your confidence, the ability to kind of take on these hard patient dialogues and run with them. And the team gains so much more respect behind the things that she's doing at this point in time, that it's just so much fun to watch. And I think it's important that to recognize that all began at the very beginning when she started working here, because we just started talking about situations throughout the day. And if you're not around someone to mentor you and show you that way, and this is how we should do things, you're in the wrong place. And I think it's really, really evident.
Yeah, that's awesome. And, I think it's important too, like I value the mentorship role more than anything, but I think people get it wrong. Like mentors don't show up. They're not like, you're not like, I'm kind of free this afternoon. What should I do? Like go mentor a few people. Like, I think the mentee has got to be the seeker. Don't you think? Even Renee, in the whole process. And what's extra special, I just want to say this too, Kevin, you and I talk about this all the time, is like, we're passionate about the younger generation of dentists, is just letting them know that there's possibilities. And Renee, you said this earlier, like one of the things you said, Renee, that's great is you learn, wow, I didn't have to work 5 to be more productive in 4. You're 10 years ahead of most dentists that it takes them their mid 40s before they go, I shouldn't work on Fridays. I don't feel as good anymore. And then they cut back Friday and they only work 4 days a week. And they're like, wow, I produce more, so the learning is faster. But I think just knowing there's a possibility of a better life out there. Like I guess this is what I'm trying. You don't have to work 24/7. You don't have to. There are people that are invested in your future. There are people that want to mentor you. You just have to search, right? Mm-hmm. In that respect. So I don't even know if there's a question in there, but I love the perspective you guys bring to the table.
I want to talk about the contract stuff, because I think when we first started, we really put everything on the table, ownership potential. How am I compensated? Is it the lab bill? I mean, all these different things go into these dialogues, but it's so much easier to have these discussions out in the beginning as opposed to once you're in, because then all of a sudden it's backtracking. I mean, Renee, 3 years ago, we started talking about, and I know this is going to go against every HR person out there, but I said, I don't know what your family plan is. I don't know how this is all going to work out, but there is a possibility that I would imagine at some point you may want to get pregnant. What does that look like? I'm not saying that I'm not going to hire you because you could get pregnant, but I'm saying this is something that I want to know what it's going to become like when and if that day comes. So I know people would be like cringe about that but I think it's pretty obvious that if I'm hiring a female, that's a possibility, right? So you just have to kind of have these dialogues. I think it's important to recognize, but at that point we already established a trust in knowing that's coming from the right intention, as opposed to, I don't know, it's easier to have those dialogues up at the beginning as opposed to midway through. And I think that's important to understand.
Right.
Well, and Kevin knew me and knew that he could have that conversation with me. So I think that in itself, like that level of trust and confidence in each other to just be transparent and open. I mean, maybe some people don't get there right away, but I mean, that was very clear that was there. And I mean, many associates will be, different sexes, a male and a female. So you have to consider these things. And I appreciated it.
Yeah. And Kevin, when you talk about that issue, the family issue, you're also talking about contracts. And then like, even I get nervous when you're like, okay, because this is the difficult stuff. With an associate, are you going to initially talk about equity, or do you just kind of like, let's see how this works? And then the compensation conversation, like, are we going to do a guaranteed thing, or is this going to be an eat what you kill formula? Is there like, these are sticky conversations, right? Mm-hmm. And what you're saying is we're going to just throw it all on the table right away from the get-go and sort it together, right?
Mm-hmm. If you can't have those difficult conversations, it's never going to work out. Because if you're not able to have those difficult dialogues, what's going to happen when something happens while working? You don't know how to discuss. It's the same thing with like relationships in your personal life. If you can't talk about the truthful things in life, then you're not going to have a solid relationship, because you're just going to withhold the truth, or you're going to hide things, or you're going to do things that aren't aligning with who you are as a person. So I threw it all out there. I'm a very open person in general. So if there's any disagreement, and there was nothing really like disagreeing worthy on these contracts either. It's not something it was pretty reasonable and fair. And I think from my end of things, I probably thought I was being very generous. I think from your end of things, it may have been, I don't think it was all that well received as generosity, especially we talked about the 6-month payment. I was like, well, I think that's a really nice gift. And then on your end, I think Renee said, well, it's less than what I was making at the prior office, so.
Short-sighted, right? I mean, that's the position most associates are in. They're just trying to find something to make more, right? And to do more. And it's realizing you need to take a step back. And I had to take that step back to invest myself in a better environment that things flourish very quickly after. And it's just, it just took a little bit of time to pause and say, this is, anyways, it was a generous offer, but for owning doctors who are taking on associates and maybe taking on someone from a DSO and they're working 6 days a week, and that's looking at comparing that compensation, it may be difficult without creating kind of that like pause, right?
Yeah.
I'll give you another example. I mean, I walked away from one office and in the contract it said, if I walk away, I lose X amount of equity that I would have bought into the practice. And I knew this going forward with it. And I knew that if I walk away, it's gone. But at the same point in time, I knew like how much would I pay for experience? How much would I pay for personal growth? How much would I pay for professional growth? It's far more than what I walked away on that table from. It's hard to swallow that pill. It's hard as a young doctor that you have bills to pay and you have mortgages and whatever it may be to say, but at the same point, there's some things that are invaluable. And that's one of those things is experience. So it's hard to look at beyond just the price tag of things and how much compensation goes. But at the same point, if it's going to be a good, worthwhile experience, you have to understand that there's something to that as well.
Yeah, I talk to young dentists. Would you guys agree with this? Like I say to young dentists all the time, I think one of the greatest things is just getting out of your car, walking into your building, go, I love this. And it's not perfect, but I like who I am. I like what we stand for. I like what we do. And that's probably 90% of the challenge going to work as a dentist. When you compromise any of the components that mean the most to you, you pay for them in some respect, whether it be through stomach lining, stress, whatever, travel, there's challenges with that. And so your message is powerful and I love it. I love it. What would you say because we have a lot of dental students watching. So we have Mark Hyman, our good friend, he enlists, he doesn't ask them, he just makes them do this. So they sign up for all. So we've got a lot of dental students watching that are getting ready to graduate. Some of them are just starting dental school. What do you want them to hear?
Go for it.
I would say seek out a mentor as soon as possible. And it may not be in your immediate work environment, but make sure you have one and someone that really you share core values with. And that's number one. And really, regardless of where you are, you can do that.
Love it. Love it. Kevin?
I think having been a dental student, but also an instructor in the clinic, I think as a student, you're just so worried about getting credits and getting all the requirements done and trying to get through the doldrums of the day. To be quite frank, nothing of what I did in dental school is shaping who I am as a dentist today. It was all the extra things I went and saw and did and people I sought out right out of dental school that really drew me forward. I mean, Kirk, you're one of my biggest mentors, and there's so many other people that I can think of that I really sought them. They didn't seek me. And I think it stay behind clinic. Once you're done with your day, in clinic, a lot of people just went home and they just started studying or whatever it may be. But I would stick and talk to my faculty and learn how they ran practices. And can I come shadow? Can I do certain things? Because those little extra things go a long way. And it makes you stand out because there's not a lot of students that did that. I was there for that intention, and only about 5% of the people I knew in dental school actually did that, Renee being one of them. So I can't emphasize that enough. There's so many people that are there to teach with the right intentions. There's so many dentists out there that want to have mentors or mentees under their wing, and yet nobody takes them under their wing because nobody asked. Nobody took the steps forward to kind of get on page with them. So to me, just learn from Renee. She did this. She took the extra steps, and it had an impression on me, and it led to something that was truly great. And it's been the best thing that's happened at this practice because I love having her here. You know, the influence that she's had in the office goes well beyond what I can do. And it's just an extension, and it keeps growing from there.
Thank
I
you,
love that.
Kevin. That's mutual, and you know that. 100%. And there's so much more to say about our relationship and how it just like become so solid, even over COVID time too, you know, some of the most trying times. But one thing that I've drastically learned over being Kevin's associate and being an associate with someone who is more growth mindset is, you know, when you graduate from dental school, you just now have the permission to learn more. And I think when you, as a newly graduated dentist, you think, okay, I've got it, I'm done, right? And I can just start working. And it's just starting, right? Like it's just starting. And that doesn't resonate right away until you start to be inspired by people who are constantly growing. And so I would just say the moment you're out of dental school, don't think it's over, and try to be inspired to constantly find ways to grow and be better.
Can't say it any better than that.
No, that's why I hired her.
This is so exciting for me. You guys, young dentists don't like this term, but I often say to young dentists, like, you have 3 decades. And they're like, oh, don't use that word. I'm like, no, you have to use that word, because if you do it right, they're like, I can't afford to go to Dawson. I'm like, no, you don't think like that. You got to go. Like, you got to get involved in a practice that you're like, oh my gosh. And so for Renee, I'm so happy for you. Like 3 decades, like this is going to be fun. You're going to learn more. You're going to learn more about yourself. You're going to challenge yourself. It'll be awesome to see what kind of leader you become. Kevin, I'm worried for you when she produces twice as much as you, in half the time, and, all that kind of stuff. And they will continue to like her more over time. It just happens, but you're totally cool with that. Like,
I encourage it. I hope it does.
That. Yeah.
That's Kevin and I have a unique situation where to me, this is like one of the biggest blessings in my life, period. And, I don't know if every associateship will have that, right? I mean, maybe that's unrealistic, but to know that it's possible and to know that you can make it happen. I mean, Kevin says this all the time, but me too. Like, I was average in my class. I wasn't this, top of the class person, but when you can recognize someone that resonates with you, don't ignore it. And that for me has just served me so much since graduating, but also just through our relationship.
Love it. Love it. This is awesome, you guys. What other thoughts? I could keep you on here for another hour, but I want to kind of bring this home. Any last thoughts you'd have just about both sides of an associateship, good, bad, or indifferent, that you would say as closing thoughts?
I think it's important to recognize that there's always a better opportunity out there if you're willing to open your mind to it. And I think so many people get out of school and they think that they have to go into these corporate settings, or they have to go into this DSO, or they have to, because that was the job that was available out there. There's always opportunities. It's just a matter of how do you find them and how hard do you want to work for that. And you can have a better life. You really can. And I feel so blessed because this wasn't the case for me 4 years ago before I started working with ACT. And we restructured everything, which is a whole different dialogue. But that laid the foundation for me to take on something like Renee as an associate. And it's only had this magnitude effect after that. So it doesn't take a lot. You can sit there and listen to this and think, oh, I don't have that. I don't have that. I don't have that. But you can, it's just baby steps to those directions. And soon enough, those baby steps start exponentially getting bigger and bigger. And eventually you become something and really enjoy life. And it can happen. It's easy. It really, I don't want to belittle the process, but it really can make a big difference in terms of your life inside the office, outside the office. And I'm just so proud to have her here. I'm so proud of ACT Dental and the influence you've had on me and my life and everything that comes from that. And Kirk, one of my best friends now. So it's just one of those things that I'm just so grateful for everything that you've done and the impact you've had. Yeah.
Well, I was you. I mean, you're a better looking me than, and you actually have hair that you probably put gel in and all that. Yeah. But I was you, when I was 25, I had no money. I remember going to the Frank Spear Practice Excellent course, and Frank would let me in for free, and going to the Dawson things and I was there just because I wanted to be invited. And I loved the dialogue, and I loved whether it be going to the bar or going to somebody's office, because you're right. When you ask somebody who's good at, hey, can I watch you for a little bit? They're like, yeah, come on in. Like, and then you become naturally curious about what they do. There's a certain energy that happens. And by osmosis, you become better. And I really feel like, I don't know, I don't want to make this the whole circle of life thing, but it's true. If you really love your profession, you're going to want to like make sure it's one of the dear friends that you and I share. His name is Bill Robbins. And you've heard me say this. I tell my son this all the time. He's 13. The great Bill Robbins told me in one of the first times I ever met him, because he gave me a big headlock and he goes, Kirk, you know what our responsibility was? And I was like, I don't know. He's like, we got to leave the campfire in better condition than we found it. And I tell my son this all the time. He's like, we don't camp. And I'm like, that's not the point. Like, we want to leave the profession and the people that are making influence. And I think what you guys are doing is awesome. And I have no doubt that when I watch your podcast in 20 years, you guys are going to be like training a whole nother level of leaders, leaving this profession in a greater place. And I'm just so grateful to watch this thing happen. So this is pretty cool. I really enjoy this a lot. And we're gonna have to do a follow-up 6 months from now, a year from now, like lessons learned, good, bad, and different. What do you think?
I'm in.
All right.
Yeah,
Cool.
we knew when, right? So
No,
Well, cool.
this was great.
Yeah, I really enjoy this a lot. And so I hope you guys did too. Stick around, both of you, while we say goodbye to everybody else. If you guys enjoyed today, which I know you did, just do us a favor, hit the share button. Share this with your friends. Keep sending us suggestions for the things that you guys want to see on the Best Practices show, whether it be from these two superstars. I can't even talk today. I've been talking all day. Or the other guests that we have. And until we see you guys next time, hope you guys enjoy your day and keep watching the Best Practices show. You guys enjoy your day.